Islam in El Salvador has a relatively recent and modest history. Unlike many countries where Islam has centuries of presence, here, it's a faith that has developed over the past few decades. To understand its roots, we have to look at the migration patterns of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. During that time, large numbers of Arab immigrants arrived in El Salvador, mainly from Palestine, Lebanon, and Syria. However, the vast majority of them were Christians. While there were some Muslim families among these early immigrants, their numbers were quite small, and their religious practices were not widely documented. For many years, Islam remained an almost invisible faith in the country. It wasn't until 1998 that the first significant Islamic institution was officially established. That year, the Centro Islámico Árabe Salvadoreño was inaugurated in San Salvador, marking the beginning of an organized Muslim presence in the country. This center was founded by a mix of Salvadoran nationals and individuals of Palestinian ancestry who sought to create a space where the growing Muslim community could come together for prayer, study, and community events. A decade later, in 2004, another major step was taken with the establishment of the Fátimah Az-Zahra Mosque, which became the center for the Shia Muslim community in El Salvador. This mosque didn't just serve as a place of worship, it also became a hub for spreading Islamic knowledge. It played a crucial role in publishing Revista Biblioteca Islamica, the first Islamic magazine in Central America, and created the country's first Islamic library. These initiatives were aimed at educating both Muslims and non-Muslims about the faith, offering a valuable resource for anyone interested in learning more about Islam. Another group that has made its mark in the country is the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, which also has a presence in El Salvador. Though a smaller branch of Islam, the Ahmadiyya community is known for its emphasis on peaceful dialogue and outreach efforts. Today, Islam in El Salvador continues to grow. Estimates suggest that the Muslim population is somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 individuals, though some reports indicate that it could be as high as 18,000. This community is made up of both immigrants and native Salvadorans who have converted to Islam, reflecting the growing interest in the religion among local populations. The country's Islamic centers serve as key gathering places where Muslims can practice their faith, learn about Islamic teachings, and engage in charitable activities. They organize Friday prayers, distribute Islamic literature, and run educational programs on Islamic doctrine and history. These centers also work on charity projects, helping those in need, regardless of their religious background. Though still a small minority in El Salvador, Muslims continue to contribute to the country's diverse religious landscape. With the increasing availability of Islamic resources and the establishment of community spaces, Islam in El Salvador is steadily carving out a more visible and structured presence in the country. When it comes to the number of Muslims in El Salvador, estimates vary significantly. Some sources suggest that the Muslim population in the country is between 1,000 and 1,500 individuals, while others claim the number could be as high as 18,000. The reason for this discrepancy is the lack of official nationwide surveys focused specifically on religious minorities. Regardless of the exact number, it is clear that the Muslim community in El Salvador is growing, made up of both immigrants and local converts who have embraced Islam. A significant portion of the Muslim population consists of immigrants, particularly from Yemen and other parts of the Middle East. Many of these individuals arrived over the past few decades, seeking new opportunities while also maintaining their religious identity. However, Islam in El Salvador is not only practiced by immigrants, there is also a notable number of native Salvadorans who have converted to Islam. These individuals come from different backgrounds and have found in Islam a spiritual path that resonates with them. Now, when we look at the distribution between Sunni and Shia Muslims in El Salvador, things become a bit more uncertain. Unlike in some countries where religious demographics are well documented, there is little concrete data about how the Muslim population in El Salvador is divided between these two major branches of Islam. What we do know is that there are Shia institutions in the country, such as the Fátimah Az-Zahra Mosque in San Salvador. The existence of this center suggests that there is a significant Shia presence. However, globally, the vast majority of Muslims, about 87% to 90%, identify as Sunni, while Shia Muslims make up approximately 10% to 13% of the Muslim population worldwide. In the absence of official numbers, it is reasonable to assume that El Salvador's Muslim population follows a similar pattern, with Sunnis forming the majority in a smaller but active Shia community. Despite their small numbers, Muslims in El Salvador are an important part of the country's religious landscape. Whether Sunni or Shia, they share common beliefs and practices, gathering for prayers, fasting during Ramadan, and celebrating Islamic festivals together. As the community continues to grow, so does its visibility, helping to shape a more diverse and multi-faith society in El Salvador. The Muslim community in El Salvador, though relatively small, is active and deeply engaged in religious, cultural, and social activities. For Muslims living in the country, daily life revolves around faith, and many of their activities are centered around religious observance and community building. Like Muslims around the world, they begin their day with Fajr, the first of the 5 daily prayers. Throughout the day, they continue to observe these prayers, often gathering at local mosques or Islamic centers, especially for the Jumu'ah prayer on Fridays, which is a significant weekly congregation. These centers not only serve as places of worship, but also act as community hubs where people come together to learn and strengthen their faith. One of the key aspects of Muslim life in El Salvador is education. Islamic centers across the country offer classes on Islamic teachings, history, and even Arabic language courses, allowing both lifelong Muslims and new converts to deepen their knowledge of the religion. These educational programs play a crucial role in fostering understanding and ensuring that Islamic traditions are preserved and passed on to future generations. Muslims in El Salvador also celebrate the 2 major Islamic festivals, Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha, with special prayers and communal gathering. Eid al-Fitr, which marks the end of Ramadan, is a time of joy, feasting, and giving to those in need, while Eid al-Adha, the festival of sacrifice, commemorates the willingness of Prophet Ibrahim to sacrifice his son in obedience to God. These celebrations are not only religious, but also cultural events that bring together families, friends, and community members, strengthening the bonds between them. Another key component of Muslim life in El Salvador is charity and social work. The concept of zakat, or obligatory charity, is deeply embedded in Islamic teachings, and many Muslims here take part in initiatives aimed at supporting those in need, whether they are fellow Muslims or from other religious backgrounds. These efforts include providing food, financial aid, and essential supplies to underprivileged communities. The Fátimah Az-Zahra Islamic Center is particularly active in these charitable endeavors, organizing projects that benefit both Muslims and non-Muslims alike. Islamic literature and information are also being shared more widely in El Salvador. Through publications, online platforms, and social media, organizations and community leaders are working to spread awareness about Islam, breaking down stereotypes, and encouraging interfaith dialogue. When it comes to where Muslims live in El Salvador, the majority reside in urban areas, particularly in the capital city, San Salvador. Here, several mosques and Islamic centers cater to the growing community. Among the most notable are Dar Ibrahim Mosque, which primarily serves Sunni Muslims, and Fátimah Az-Zahra Mosque, which caters to the Shia community. However, San Salvador is not the only place where Islam has a presence. In Santa Ana, another important city in El Salvador, there is a mosque known as Masjid Palestina, which indicates that the Muslim community is not limited to the capital, but is also growing in other regions. Despite their small numbers, Muslims in El Salvador are deeply connected to their faith and continue to contribute to the country's religious and cultural diversity. Through prayer, education, charity, and community involvement, they maintain their religious identity while fostering mutual respect and understanding with the broader Salvadoran society. Islam in El Salvador exists within a legal framework that guarantees freedom of religion. The country's constitution explicitly prohibits discrimination based on religious beliefs, ensuring that Muslims, like followers of other faiths, can practice their religion freely and establish places of worship without legal restrictions. This allows the Muslim community, although small, to maintain mosques, Islamic centers, and religious activities without interference from the state. Unlike some regions where Islamophobia is a serious issue, El Salvador does not have widespread evidence of organized Islamophobic groups or systematic anti-Muslim discrimination. There are no known laws or policies that specifically target Muslims, nor is there a large-scale societal movement against Islam. The Muslim community is generally able to live and practice their faith without fear of persecution. However, Islamophobia is a growing issue in some parts of Latin America, particularly in neighboring Mexico, where there have been reports of aggression against Muslim women. While there is no concrete data on similar incidents in El Salvador, It is possible that individual cases of prejudice or misunderstanding exist, as they do in many parts of the world. These incidents are not officially documented, making it difficult to assess their true impact. One aspect that often comes up in discussions about Islam in El Salvador is the Palestinian community. Interestingly, the majority of Salvadorans with Palestinian ancestry are Christian, not Muslim. This means that even though there is a significant Palestinian presence in the country, it does not necessarily translate to a large Muslim population. President Nayib Bukele, who has Palestinian ancestry himself, has taken a strong stance on international security issues. He has publicly condemned groups like Hamas, even drawing comparisons between them and local Salvadoran gangs such as MS-13. His government's hardline approach to crime and security aligns with this perspective, framing conflicts in terms of a struggle between good and evil. Overall, El Salvador does not have a history of significant anti-Muslim sentiment or organized Islamophobic activities. The country's laws protect freedom of religion, and there are no known barriers preventing Muslims from practicing their faith. However, as in many countries, isolated cases of prejudice or misunderstanding may exist, reflecting broader regional trends rather than a specific issue within El Salvador itself. For now, the Muslim community continues to grow and integrate into Salvadoran society while maintaining its religious identity. And that brings us to the end of our journey exploring Islam in El Salvador. As we've seen, the Muslim community here, though small, is active, resilient, and growing. From its historical roots to its daily practices, from its places of worship to the challenges it faces, Islam is becoming an increasingly recognized part of Salvadoran society. If you found this video informative and want to see more content like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your support helps us continue bringing you well-researched and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.